The meeting hall stretched wide across the station's central ring. Representatives from 47 species sat in their assigned sections. The air filters worked hard to keep the atmosphere breathable for everyone. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the human delegation spot. His uniform was clean and pressed. His face showed nothing. The council chairman, a tall creature called Vexithar, raised 3 of his forearms. His voice came through the translators mounted on every seat. "We gathered today to address the human question," Vexithar said. "For 3 years, humanity has served the Galactic Council. For 3 years, they have answered every call for help, but now we must discuss the cost of their service." Jake kept his hands behind his back. Next to him, Commander Lisa Hayes watched the other delegates. She had been in the military for 15 years. She knew when people were about to say something stupid. A delegate from the Korthan Empire stood up. His name was Zelkrim. He wore expensive robes covered in metals he never earned in battle. "The humans demand too much," Zelkrim said. His voice was high and sharp. "They want payment for their soldiers. They want resources for their ships. They expect us to treat them like equals." Jake felt his jaw tighten. Lisa put a hand on his arm. "Wait," her touch said. "Let them talk." Another delegate rose. This one was from the Pelthian systems. Her name was difficult for humans to say, so everyone called her Mira. "The humans have saved 17 worlds in 3 years," Mira said quietly. "They have lost thousands of their people doing it. Perhaps we should remember that." "They chose to help," Zelkrim shot back. "No one forced them. No one asked them to be heroes. That was not true." Jake remembered very well how the Council had begged Earth to join them. The Krill invasion had been destroying everything in its path. The Council's own military forces had failed again and again. Then humans showed up with their strange ships and stranger weapons. Then humans showed up with their willingness to die for people they had just met. Vexthar spoke again. "The human delegation has submitted a proposal. They request trade agreements. They request seats on the Security Council. They request that human casualties be honored the same way we honor our own fallen warriors." "Unacceptable," Zelkrim said. Several other delegates made sounds of agreement. Jake finally spoke. His voice was calm and clear. "We are not asking for charity. We are asking for basic respect." The hall went quiet. Humans rarely spoke up in these meetings. They usually just listened and did what they were told. "Respect must be earned," Zelkrim said. "We earned it," Jake replied. "We earned it at the Battle of Helios 7, where we lost 200 Marines saving your mining colony. We earned it at Drexar Station, where my crew held the line for 6 hours while your people evacuated. We earned it every single time you called for help and we came running." Lisa stood up beside him. "We have the casualty reports. We have the battle records. We have documented every mission, every loss, every victory. The data is available to anyone who wants to see it." "Numbers on a screen," Zelkrim said with a wave of his hand. "This does not change the facts. Humanity is new to the galaxy. You have been here barely 5 of your years. You do not understand our ways. You do not understand the balance we have maintained for centuries." "Your balance almost got you wiped out," Jake said. His voice was harder now. "Your balance did not stop the Krill. Your fleets ran. Your armies broke. Your precious balance was worth nothing when the real fighting started." The hall erupted in angry voices. Delegates shouted at each other. Some defended the humans. Most did not. Vexthar called for order. It took several minutes for the noise to die down. "The council will vote," Vexthar announced. "All in favor of granting the human requests, raise your hand." Jake watched as hands and tentacles and claws rose into the air. He counted 12. 12 out of 47. All opposed? 31 delegates voted no. 4 abstained. "The motion fails," Vexthar said. "The human requests are denied. This council stands by its original agreement. Humanity will continue to serve under the current terms." Jake looked at Lisa. She looked back at him. They had both known this was coming. Earth had warned them. The politicians back home said the council would never treat humans as equals. The military leaders said the other species only cared about human blood, not human dignity. "Captain Morrison," Vexthar said, "do you accept the council's decision?" Jake took a deep breath. He thought about all the people who had died wearing Earth's uniform. He thought about Private Danny Ross, who threw himself on a plasma grenade to save a group of alien children. He thought about Lieutenant Amy Parker, who flew her damaged ship into an enemy carrier. Because her weapons were offline, and it was the only way to stop it. He thought about going home and telling their families that the galaxy did not care. "No," Jake said simply. The hall went silent again. This was not a word the council heard very often. "Explain yourself," Vexthar demanded. "Humanity is done," Jake said. "We are withdrawing from the council effective immediately. All human ships will return to Earth space. All human personnel will be recalled. You want to maintain your balance? Do it without us." The protest started immediately. Delegates jumped to their feet. Some shouted. Some threatened. Zelkrim's face turned a dark purple color. "You cannot do this," Vexthar said. "We have agreements. We have treaties. Read them again," Lisa said coldly. Paragraph 17, Section 4. Either party may withdraw with 30 days' notice if fundamental terms are violated. You violated them. We are withdrawing. Jake turned and walked toward the exit. Lisa followed him. Behind them, the council chamber descended into chaos. The human ships began leaving within hours. The USS Defiant was the first to break orbit around Council Station Alpha. Captain Sarah Mitchell gave the order herself. Her crew had been ready for this moment. They had packed their gear. They had said quiet goodbyes to the few aliens who had become friends. Commander Greg Turner stood on the bridge watching the station shrink in the viewscreen. He had served on the Defiant for 2 years. He had bled for the Council. He had watched good people die for species that would not even learn their names. "Course laid in for Earth," the navigator said. Her name was Kelly Foster. She was 23 years old. This was her first deep space assignment. "Take us home," Sarah said. The Defiant's engines flared bright blue. The ship jumped to faster-than-light speed. 13 other human vessels followed within the hour. On Council Station Alpha, panic was spreading. Delegates rushed through corridors. Emergency meetings were called. The communication channels filled with angry messages and desperate pleas. Vexthar sat in his private office. His skin had turned a pale gray. He was looking at reports on his desk. Reports about ship movements. Reports about human military assets. Reports about how many humans were actually in Council space. The numbers were bigger than he expected. Much bigger. Humans had been busy during their 3 years of service. They had built supply bases on 6 different worlds. They had established training facilities for mixed-species combat units. They had created medical stations that treated wounded from every council member. They had done all of this quietly, without bragging or asking for recognition. Now they were shutting it all down. Lieutenant Ben Crawford supervised the evacuation of Firebase Talon. The base sat on a moon orbiting a gas giant in the Tertian system. 60 human Marines were stationed there, along with training equipment worth billions of credits. "Pack everything that moves," Ben told his squad leaders. "Destroy everything else." "Sir, the Tertian Defense Force is asking us to stay," Corporal Nina Hayes said. "They say they need more time to take over the facility." "Not our problem anymore," Ben replied. He felt bad saying it. The Tertians had been decent to work with. But orders were orders. Earth had spoken. Humanity was coming home. The Marines worked through the night. They loaded ships with weapons and supplies. They wiped computer systems. They set demolition charges on the structures that were too big to move. When they left, Firebase Talon would be an empty shell. Across the galaxy, the same scene played out dozens of times. Humans packed up and moved out. They were efficient. They were thorough. They did not argue or complain. They simply left. In the medical station above Corvin Prime, Dr. Helen Martinez prepared to evacuate her staff. The station had treated over 10,000 patients in 2 years. Human doctors and nurses had worked alongside alien medical personnel. They had shared knowledge and techniques. They had saved lives together. Now the alien staff watched in confusion as the humans prepared to leave. "You cannot go," said Dr. Pelthor, a reptilian surgeon who had become Helen's close colleague. "We have patients in critical care. We have surgeries scheduled. The hospital depends on your equipment." "I am sorry," Helen said. She meant it. Pelthor was a good doctor and a good person. "Our government has made the decision. We have to follow it." "But people will die," Pelthor said quietly. Helen stopped packing. She looked at her friend. "People have been dying. Human people, and when we asked the council to show even basic respect for their sacrifice, we were told no. So now we are going home. I am truly sorry, but this is how it has to be." The evacuation took 4 days. The human medical teams left behind basic supplies and training manuals. They showed the remaining staff how to use the equipment they could not take with them. Then they boarded their ships and departed. Back on Council Station Alpha, Vexthar called another emergency session. The hall was packed. Every delegate was present. The mood was very different from the last meeting. "We must convince the humans to reconsider," Vexthar began. "We must offer them something." "Offer them what they asked for in the first place," Mira said. She had not slept in 2 days. Her fur looked dull and unkempt. "Give them the trade agreements. Give them the council seats. Honor their dead." "Impossible," Zelkrim said, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "We cannot set such a precedent. If we give in to human demands, every other species will want the same." "Maybe they should have it," someone called out from the back of the hall. Arguments broke out again. Delegates shouted over each other. Nothing was decided. While the council argued, the humans kept leaving. Military units withdrew from border patrols. Engineering teams abandoned construction projects. Intelligence officers packed up their surveillance equipment and erased their databases. The communications officer on Council Station Alpha tried to reach Jake Morrison. She sent messages every hour. They all went unanswered. On the third day, she finally got a response. It was not from Jake. It was from Admiral Richard Hayes, the commander of all human forces in Council space. The message was short and professional. "All human personnel will complete withdrawal within 27 days as specified by treaty. We thank the Council for the opportunity to serve. We wish you well in your future endeavors." That was it. No anger, no accusations, no threats. Just a polite goodbye. Vexthar read the message 3 times. He finally understood. The humans were not bluffing. They were not trying to negotiate. They were simply done. He called his senior advisors into his office. "Calculate the losses," he ordered. "I need to know exactly what we are losing when the humans leave." The advisors worked through the night. The report they produced was devastating. Humanity had been providing 40% of the Council's frontline combat forces. They had been running 62% of emergency response operations. Their medical teams had been handling over half of all combat trauma cases. Their intelligence network had been tracking threats across 17 sectors. All of that was going away. "Can we replace them?" Vexthar asked. His military advisor, a scarred veteran named Kolrath, shook his head. "Not quickly. Maybe not at all. The humans fight differently than we do. They take risks we would never take. They win battles we would consider lost causes. Finding species willing to do that kind of work will be difficult." "What about the krill?" Vexthar asked quietly. The room went silent. Everyone remembered the krill. Everyone remembered how close the galaxy had come to total destruction. "The krill are still out there," Kolrath said. "We pushed them back, but we did not destroy them. Intelligence suggests they are rebuilding their fleets. If they attack again without human support, we will lose." Vexthar felt old and tired. He had led the Council for 20 years. He had maintained peace and stability through careful diplomacy. He had built a system that worked. But he had forgotten something important. He had forgotten that the people who protect you deserve to be valued. The human withdrawal was almost complete. 26 days had passed since Jake Morrison walked out of the Council chamber. In 3 more days, every human ship would be gone from Council space. The effects were already visible. Pirates who had been quiet for years suddenly became bold. They raided shipping lanes that humans used to patrol. Council defense forces tried to stop them, but the pirates were smart. They knew the aliens would not chase them the way humans did. They knew the aliens would give up when things got too dangerous. In the Outer Rim territories, 5 colonies sent distress calls in 1 week. Raiders were attacking settlements. People were dying. The local defense forces were overwhelmed. Before the human withdrawal, a single human cruiser could have handled the situation. The cruiser would have jumped in, fought off the raiders, and stayed until reinforcements arrived. Humans were good at showing up when you needed them. Now there were no human ships to call. The Council had to scramble to send its own forces. It took them 8 days to respond. By then, 2 of the 5 colonies had been destroyed. 3,000 people were dead or missing. On Council Station Alpha, Vexthar received the casualty reports in silence. His advisors stood around his desk waiting for orders. "Send the full report to all Council members," Vexthar said finally. Make sure they understand the connection between the human withdrawal and these deaths. His communication officer hesitated. Sir, some delegates will say you are trying to blame them for voting against the human proposal. I am blaming them, Vexthar said quietly. And I am blaming myself. We made a choice. Now we live with it, the report went out. The reaction was immediate and divided. Some delegates expressed regret. Others doubled down on their position. Zelkrim gave interviews saying the council needed to develop its own strength instead of depending on others. But words did not stop pirates. Words did not protect colonies. Words did not fill the gaps in the defense lines. Lieutenant Commander Tony Blake was one of the last humans in council space. He commanded a small patrol ship called the Ranger. His mission was to escort human supply convoys to the final evacuation points. On day 27, the Ranger picked up a distress signal. A civilian transport was under attack near the Helion asteroid field. The ship was Pelthian. About 200 passengers were on board. Should we respond? His tactical officer asked. Her name was Kate Morris. She was young but smart. Tony checked his orders. They were clear. No engagement with hostile forces. Complete withdrawal immediately. Get home. He looked at the distress signal data. The transport had families on board. Children. The attackers were closing in fast. Plot an intercept course, Tony said. Sir, our orders. I know our orders, Tony cut her off. But those are kids dying out there. I did not join the service to ignore distress calls. Set the course. The Ranger jumped into action. It took them 6 minutes to reach the transport. 3 pirate ships were already firing on the civilian vessel. The transport's shields were failing. Tony did not bother with warnings or negotiations. The Ranger opened fire immediately. Humans had earned a reputation for aggressive combat tactics. Pirates had learned to fear them. 2 of the pirate ships broke off and ran. The 3rd tried to fight. That was a mistake. The Ranger's weapons cut through its shields in seconds. The pirate ship exploded. This is the Ranger to civilian transport, Tony broadcast. You are safe. Proceed to the nearest station. The reply came through shaky but grateful. Thank you, Ranger. Thank you so much. Please, can you escort us? We are afraid they will come back. Tony wanted to say yes. He wanted to stay and make sure these people got home safely. But he had pushed his luck far enough. Negative, he said. We have orders to withdraw. Contact Council Defense Forces for escort. Good luck. He cut the channel before they could respond. He did not want to hear them beg. Take us home, Kate, he said quietly. The Ranger jumped to faster than light speed. Behind them, the Pelthian transport limped toward safety alone. News of the rescue spread quickly. The Pelthian government sent formal thanks to Earth. They also sent a message to the Council asking why human ships were leaving when they were clearly still needed. The Council had no good answer. On day 29, the final human ships prepared to leave. Admiral Richard Hayes stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Valiant. Around him, the last elements of the human fleet were forming up for the jump home. A priority message came through. It was from Vexthar himself. Admiral Hayes, I request permission to speak with you before you depart. Richard considered ignoring it. But he had been in the military for 30 years. He believed in protocol and proper procedure. He accepted the call. Vexthar appeared on the view screen. The council chairman looked like he had aged 10 years in 4 weeks. Admiral, I want to apologize, Vexthar said. The council made a mistake. We did not appreciate what humanity was providing. We did not understand the cost of losing you. I appreciate that, Richard said carefully, but apologies do not change anything. The decision has been made. What if we reconsidered? Vexthar asked. What if we granted your requests? The trade agreements, the council seats, the honors for your fallen? Richard shook his head. It is too late for that. You had your chance to do the right thing. You chose pride over justice. Now you get to live with that choice. People are dying because of this withdrawal, Vexthar said. His voice was urgent now, almost desperate. Colonies are being raided. Trade routes are collapsing. We need human help. You had human help, Richard replied coldly. You had thousands of humans willing to die for your people. You had doctors, engineers, soldiers, all working to keep your civilization safe. And when we asked for basic respect in return, you said no. So now you do not get our help anymore. The delegates who voted against you were wrong, Vexthar insisted. Surely you can see that most of the council values humanity. Surely we can find a compromise. Most of the council stayed silent, Richard corrected him. 12 delegates voted in our favor. 12 out of 47. That tells me exactly how much the council values humanity. The answer is not very much. Vexthar seemed to deflate. What would it take for you to reconsider? Richard thought about it. He thought about all the humans who had died wearing council insignia. He thought about the families back on Earth who would never see their loved ones again. He thought about Jake Morrison's face when the vote results came in. Honestly, I do not know if there is anything you could offer now, Richard said. You showed us who you are. You showed us that when it comes down to it, humans are just tools to you. Useful tools, but tools nonetheless. Earth does not send its people out to be tools for anyone. So this is final? Vexthar asked quietly. This is final, Richard confirmed. In 6 hours, every human ship will be gone from council space. If you need help after that, you will have to find it somewhere else. I wish you luck, Chairman. You are going to need it. Richard ended the call. He turned to his crew. All ships prepare for jump to Earth space. We are going home. The human fleet activated their faster-than-light drives. One by one, the ships vanished from Council sensors. Within an hour, Council space was empty of human vessels for the first time in 3 years. On Earth, people watched the news coverage of the returning fleet. There were celebrations in some places. Pride that humanity had stood up for itself. Relief that loved ones were coming home. But there was also uncertainty. What would happen now? What would the galaxy look like without human protection? And what would happen if the Krill came back? Those questions would have to wait. For now, humanity was done with the Galactic Council. The experiment was over. 3 months passed. The galaxy learned to function without humans. It was not easy. The Council increased military spending by 400%. They recruited new defense forces from member species. They built new ships and trained new crews. But quantity could not replace quality. The new forces were adequate for routine patrols. They could handle small threats, but they lacked something the humans had possessed. They lacked the willingness to die for strangers. When a council patrol encountered heavily armed pirates, the patrol would assess the situation carefully. They would calculate risks. Often, they would decide the risk was too high and call for backup. By the time backup arrived, the pirates were usually gone. Human patrols had been different. Human crews would see a threat and engage immediately. They would chase pirates through asteroid fields and nebulas. They would fight outnumbered and outgunned. They would take damage and casualties, but they would get the job done. The Council was learning that you could not train that kind of attitude. Either a species had it or they did not. The economic effects were severe too. Trade routes that humans had protected were now dangerous. Shipping companies had to hire expensive private security. Insurance rates went up. Some routes became too risky to use at all. Entire trade networks collapsed. Smaller council members suffered the most. They had depended on human protection because they could not afford their own defense forces. Now they were vulnerable. Some were conquered by aggressive neighbors. Others simply closed their borders and tried to survive on their own. The council met weekly now. Every meeting was about the same thing. How do we deal with the problems caused by the human departure? Zelkrim no longer attended the meetings. He had resigned in disgrace after his homeworld was raided 3 times in 2 months. The Korthan Empire blamed him for pushing the humans away. His own people had turned on him. Mira now led the faction that wanted to negotiate with Earth. She had support from about 20 delegates, but she faced strong opposition from those who saw asking humans to come back as admitting weakness. We must swallow our pride, Mira argued in one heated session. The facts are clear. Without human support, the Council is failing. Crime is up. Trade is down. Member worlds are suffering. We need to bring them back. We need to be stronger ourselves, countered a delegate from the Vrax Collective. Depending on one species was always a mistake. We should use this crisis to build our own capabilities. That will take years, Mira shot back. Decades even. How many more worlds will burn while we learn to do what the humans did naturally? The debate went nowhere. It never did. On Earth, life had returned to something close to normal. The returning military personnel were welcomed home as heroes. There were parades and ceremonies. Politicians gave speeches about standing up for human dignity. But the military leaders were worried. Admiral Richard Hayes met with the Earth Defense Council twice a week. The reports from deep space monitoring stations troubled him. The Krill are moving again, he told the council at one meeting. Our long-range sensors show increased activity in their territory. They are building new ships. Let the Galactic Council handle it, said one of the council members, a politician named Victor Cruz. Not our problem anymore. It will become our problem if the Krill break through council defenses, Richard replied. They wanted to exterminate all organic life, remember? That includes us. So what do you propose? Asked another council member, a woman named Patricia Cole. We go crawling back to people who disrespected us? I propose we prepare, Richard said. We pulled all our forces back to Earth space. That was the right move politically. But strategically we are now isolated. If the Krill attack the council and win, they will turn their attention to us eventually. Then we will fight them here, Victor said. On our terms. We will lose, Richard said bluntly. The council, with all its resources and member species, barely stopped the Krill last time, even with our help. Earth alone cannot win that fight. The debate continued, but no decisions were made. Earth's government was still angry about the council's treatment. Public opinion strongly favored staying away from galactic affairs. Nobody wanted to be the one to suggest going back. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison had retired from active service. He lived quietly in Colorado, trying to adjust to civilian life. It was harder than he expected. He had spent 3 years in deep space, fighting battles, saving lives. Normal life felt small and meaningless by comparison. One evening he received a visitor. Lisa Hayes, his former second-in-command, drove up to his cabin in the mountains. I thought you were still on active duty, Jake said as he poured coffee. I resigned last week. Lisa looked tired. I could not do it anymore. Sitting in Earth orbit running drills while the galaxy burns. It felt wrong. Jake nodded. He understood completely. Have you been following the news from Council Space? Lisa asked. I try not to, Jake admitted. But yes, it is bad out there. It is worse than the news reports say, Lisa told him. I still have contacts in Council Space. The situation is deteriorating fast. Some member species are talking about breaking away and forming their own defense pacts. The Council is fracturing. That is their problem to solve, Jake said, but he did not sound convinced. Is it? Lisa challenged him. When the Krill come back and sweep through Council Space, when they get stronger by consuming all those worlds, will it still be just their problem? Jake did not have a good answer for that. Lisa leaned forward. There is a movement building. Former military personnel who think we made a mistake. Not about leaving. We had to do that. But about cutting all ties. Some of us think we should have maintained some connection, even if we were not serving under the Council anymore. Like what? Jake asked. Mutual defense treaties, trade agreements, cultural exchanges, something to keep channels open. Lisa paused. A group of us are planning to approach the Earth government with a proposal. We want you to be part of it. Why me? Jake asked. I am the one who walked out of the council chamber. I am the one who started this whole withdrawal. Exactly, Lisa said. Which means you are the one person who can propose a middle path without looking weak. You stood up for human dignity. Everyone respects that. If you say we should find a way to work with the council on our terms, people will listen. Jake thought about it. He thought about all the aliens he had fought beside. He thought about Mira, who had voted in humanity's favor even when it would have been easier to stay silent. He thought about Dr. Pelthor and the other decent people scattered across council space. He also thought about the ones who had died, the humans who gave everything and received nothing in return. I need to think about it, Jake said finally. Lisa stood to leave. Do not think too long. The Krill are not going to wait for us to make up our minds. After she left, Jake sat on his porch and watched the sunset. The mountains were peaceful. The air was clean. Everything about this place said safety and home. But in his mind, he could still see the starfield. He could still feel the responsibility of command. He could still hear the distress calls from people who needed help. Jake Morrison had walked away from the Galactic Council, but he was starting to realize that some things followed you home. 6 months after the withdrawal, everything changed. The Krill returned. The first attacks were surgical and devastating. 3 council border stations went silent within an hour. The Krill had learned from their previous defeat. They had studied human tactics. They had built better ships. Most importantly, they had waited until the humans were gone. The council's response was immediate but ineffective. Defense fleets scrambled to intercept the Krill advance. The battles were brutal and one-sided. Without human ships leading the charge, without human commanders pushing forward when the odds looked bad, the Council forces fell back again and again. Within a week, the Krill had pushed 50 light-years into Council space. 7 worlds were under attack. 2 had already fallen silent. On Earth, Admiral Richard Hayes watched the reports with a grim expression. The Earth Defense Council met an emergency session. "They are going to lose," Richard said simply. The Krill adapted their strategy to exploit Council weaknesses. "Without human forces to hold the line, this will be a slaughter." "Still not our problem," Victor Cruz insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. Patricia Cole shook her head. "If the Council falls, how long before the Krill reach Earth space?" 5 years, 10? Less, Richard said. "Once they control Council territory, they will have the resources of 47 member species. They will build a fleet that nothing can stop. We either fight them now while the Council is still standing, or we fight them later when we are alone." The room fell silent. Everyone knew he was right. "Contact the Council," Patricia said finally. "Find out what they need." Vexthar received the message from Earth with something close to relief. He responded within the hour. The conversation was direct and honest. Earth offered military support against the Krill. In return, they wanted everything they had asked for 6 months ago. Trade agreements, Council seats, recognition and honor for all human personnel. They also wanted something new: autonomy. Human forces would coordinate with Council military but would maintain independent command. Humans would choose their own missions and set their own rules of engagement. "You are asking us to accept that humans are equals," Vexthar said during the negotiation call. "No," Richard replied. "We are telling you that humans are equals. You can accept it or you can face the Krill alone. Your choice." Vexthar looked at the casualty reports on his desk. 3 more worlds had fallen in the last day. The death toll was approaching 1 million. "I accept your terms," Vexthar said. "When can you deploy?" "Our forces are already moving," Richard told him. "We will have ships in Council space within 48 hours. True to his word, human ships began arriving 2 days later. But these were not the same forces that had withdrawn. Earth had spent 6 months preparing for this moment. The ships were upgraded. The crews were rested and trained. The tactics were refined. And they were angry. Humans do not forget easily. Captain Tony Blake commanded one of the first ships to engage the Krill. His patrol ship had been upgraded to a heavy cruiser. The Ranger was now a frontline combat vessel. "Remember," Tony told his crew over the shipwide channel, "we are not fighting for the Council. We are fighting because if we do not, the Krill will eventually come for Earth. We are defending our home by defending their space. Never forget the difference." The crew responded with a disciplined acknowledgement. Everyone on board remembered how the Council had treated them. Everyone remembered the vote. This time was different, though. This time humans were not asking permission. This time they were setting the terms. The Ranger jumped into a battle zone where 3 Council ships were being overwhelmed by Krill attackers. The Council ships were falling back in good order, trying to minimize losses. That was smart from a tactical standpoint, but it ceded ground to the enemy. Tony did not care about smart tactics. He cared about winning. All weapons full spread on the lead Krill ship. "Helm, take us in close. I want to be where they can taste our exhaust." The Ranger charged straight at the enemy formation. The Krill ships turned to meet this new threat. They had not expected such aggressive tactics from a single vessel. The Ranger's weapons lit up space. Missiles and energy beams hammered the lead Krill ship. The enemy's shields buckled under the assault. Tony pressed the advantage. "Ram them if we have to," he ordered. But that ship does not leave this fight functional. They did not have to ram. The Krill ship's shields failed. The Ranger's weapons tore into the hull. Secondary explosions rippled through the enemy vessel. It broke apart. The other Krill ships retreated. Human aggression had shocked them. They had gotten used to fighting cautious Council forces. They had forgotten what humans were capable of. More human ships arrived in the following days. Jake Morrison came out of retirement to lead a battle group. Lisa Hayes commanded a carrier strike force. Admiral Richard Hayes took personal command of the human fleet. The tide of battle began to turn. Humans did not just fight harder than Council forces. They fought smarter. They used tactics the Krill could not predict. They took risks that seemed suicidal but somehow worked. They coordinated with Council forces but were not limited by Council command structures. Most importantly, they were there by choice this time. They knew exactly what they were fighting for and why. That made all the difference. The Krill advance stopped. Then it reversed. Slowly, system by system, human and council forces pushed the enemy back. The cost was high. Dozens of human ships were destroyed. Thousands of personnel died in the fighting. But this time, when humans fell in battle, the council noticed. Vexthar attended every memorial service. He stood beside human families and expressed genuine grief for their losses. He made sure that human names were carved into council monuments alongside the names of fallen council warriors. More importantly, he made sure that every delegate saw him doing it. He was making a point. Humans had earned respect through their blood. The council would give them that respect, or he would find new council members. The war against the Krill took 3 months. When it finally ended, both sides were exhausted. The Krill retreated to their home territory. The council had held, but barely. In the aftermath, the galaxy looked different. Humanity now held 3 permanent seats on the Security Council. Human ships patrolled the most dangerous border regions. Human trade goods flowed freely through council space. But the most important change was not written in any treaty. It was a shift in attitude. The other species looked at humans differently now. They saw partners, not servants. They saw equals, not tools. Jake Morrison attended the final peace conference. He stood beside Vexthar as they signed the new agreements between Earth and the Council. "You could have let us fall," Vexthar said quietly. "After how we treated you, you would have been justified in watching us burn." "Maybe," Jake admitted. "But that is not who we are. We do not let people die when we can help them, even people who wronged us." "That is what makes humans different," Vexthar said. "That is what makes you valuable, not your weapons or your tactics. Your willingness to do what is right even when it is hard." Jake thought about that. The council needed to understand that doing what is right goes both ways. "We will fight for you. We will die for you if we must. But we will not be disrespected. We will not be taken for granted." "Understood," Vexthar said. "I hope the council remembers this lesson." "If they forget," Jake said calmly, "we will remind them. We walked away once. We can do it again." That was the truth that hung over everything now. Humans had proved they could survive without the council. They had proved they could walk away when necessary. That gave them power that no treaty could grant. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson. Humans were not desperate for acceptance. They did not need the council's approval. They would cooperate, they would help, they would fight and bleed alongside other species, but only on terms of mutual respect. The humans had walked away in silence. The council had paid the cost. And in paying that cost, they had finally learned the value of what they had lost. Now rebuilding would begin. The relationship between Earth and the Council would never be the same as before. It would be better. More honest, based on respect instead of convenience. Jake Morrison looked up at the stars visible through the conference room windows. Somewhere out there, humans and aliens were working together, learning from each other, protecting each other. It had taken a crisis to get here. It had taken withdrawal and return. It had taken the Council coming face to face with what they had lost. But in the end, perhaps it was worth it. Because now, finally, humanity had its place in the galaxy. Not as servants, not as tools, but as equals. And that, Jake thought, was worth fighting for.